What's going on, guys? It's Bobby here. Today we're looking at all of the Neopets Battledome TCG cards, and we're going to rate them on a 1 to 5 scale. Just to explain the scale a little bit, 1 star means the card is bad or it's not good enough to see any play. 2 stars means the card is okay. You know, it could see play here and there, maybe in some like fringe or rogue comps, but for the most part, most decks aren't going to be playing this unless its purpose is clear. 3 stars mean the card is playable, maybe in like a specific archetype the card itself will be good in, but it's not going to be played in every deck. 4 stars means it's an absolute staple to that archetype, or it's a good card to splash in other strategies as well, an all-around good card. And 5 stars means the card can be used in any deck, it's broken, staple, whatever term you want to use. Those are the cards you definitely could play in every deck that you have. We are going to start with the starter deck exclusives themselves. Now, I'm just going to compile on all of the starter deck equipment, the potions themselves. Also, I'm throwing in a 1 star, including the Starry Hot Dog. All these cards, after you get through playing starter decks, you're probably going to want to toss these aside and upgrade them as you go when you open packs or you pick up singles from other people. There's one exception to this list, actually, we'll get to in a minute, but first, the card that I want to go over first is Nilo, a starter deck exclusive to the Starry, Akara, and Fire Uni starter decks. Nilo is extremely versatile card, can grab your Corbat Defenders, can grab your Harry and Blue Bones, can grab Breadmaster. The versatility in Nilo and allowing you to keep your consistency is amazing. Nilo feels good to play on round 1, it feels good to play on round 5 of a battle. So Nilo, overall, great card to have. 5 stars. Let's just go on to the next one. There's not much more to say about him. He's just a great guy. Next card is the Money Tree. Money Tree, I'm putting at 2 stars. Money Tree is an interesting card. So you get to draw cards from your deck up to the number of cards in your opponent's hand. And I remember when this card was first announced, it was one of the first cards announced. Money Tree sounded amazing. It was cracked. I thought this card was going to completely break the game. I was like, whoa, Bobby, what are you doing? And then as more cards got revealed, we see a lot other draw stuff. It feels a lot more consistent than Money Tree. There's 2 issues with the Money Tree. The first issue is you have to be down on cards from your opponent, which granted isn't that hard. The second issue with Money Tree is you don't want to particularly see this in your opening hand. Now when you pick cards to play in your deck, I personally like to see the cards that I can play in round 1 and feel good about. The issue with Money Tree is you can't reliably play it on round 1. It's too slow, you're not going to get enough draw. The Money Tree really shines in rounds 2 and 3 if you're playing like a discard deck or a fairy deck and you're cycling the cards back into your deck or discarding them into the discard pile. Using those pets abilities is a great way to refill your hand if your opponent has a big hand themselves, but that's also the issue, is you're only using it in that scenario and no other ones. Money Tree in the first game will likely be worse, if not on par, than like Dr. Flexo. And I would rather just play Dr. Flexo in the 2 slot there. I don't think Money Tree is good enough, but I did have a really funny experience at locals where I put this card in and I drew 11 off of it. So I give it 2 stars because it's a fantastic meme card. Next card is the Dual Expert Bow. Now Bobby, why do you say the Dual Expert Bow is good? This is another one of those starter deck exclusive equips, but it's very unique. It gives 2 attack and 2 agility. Both those stats are really good with each other. I think this card is incredibly slept on. I think this is one of the better equipment in the game. I'm currently playtesting a build that uses dual expert bow. My combo is to play Judge Hog. Judge Hog reveals maybe this card and other multi-attackers like Cow Defender and Mammoth to really put the pressure on my opponent. Attack and agility is really insane. Stacking up equipment boosts when you're doing multi-attacks is pretty crazy. If you reveal multiple multi-attackers through Judge Hog, which is pretty easy to do, that +2 attack and +2 agility means +4 attack and +4 agility for the round, or +6 attack and +6 agility for the round. I think dual expert bow is the best equipment to come out of the starter decks, and I can't wait to see what potential this does. Now, it does suffer from being a 4 cost, so you do have to be level 4 to play it, and through conventional means, I think dual expert bow is a little too slow, but if you combo with it, I think this card helps you really pop off. So I'm a big fan of dual expert bow. I think this card deserves 3 stars. Next up is Flaming Hot Dog. Flaming Hot Dog is also very unique in that it makes you immune from being frozen. The only other card to do that is the Shield of Scorching, and the Shield of Scorching can only be played on your turn. Flaming Hot Dog you can play in response to your opponent playing Lady Frostbite or other freezing effects, and it makes you immune. Now you have to be careful, you cannot play Flaming Hot Dog on your turn and expect your pet to be unfrozen. It does not work that way. So you have to play it in response to Lady Frostbite, in response to Judora's Hourglass. And for that on its own, I think it's a perfect hand trap. I think 3 stars is perfect. The additional attack and agility is also great when you want to make a final push to try to KO your opponent. And now we're going to move on to the Neopets Battledome TCG list. We're going to start out with Athia. So the nice thing about Athia is she can stack your equipment. She has incredible synergy with the Battle Fairy archetype. The Battle Fairy equipment, when revealed, you get to play them provided you're the correct level, and the effects from those work with when you reveal equipment. You get various effects, like the staff gives you +2 attack, and the shield will give you defense. So stacking with Athia can provide a lot of value in those decks. It also lets you equip a 4th card, which I haven't seen come up very often, but it is there as an option. I think it's pretty good. It's only good in the fairy decks. I do see a lot of people opting not to play Athia because Athia is pretty slow. Athia does feel kind of like a win more card, and that when you start snowballing off of it, you probably would have done that with any other card, really. So I understand why people don't play Athia. However, I think Athia is pretty good for that consistency. And for that, I'll give Athia 3 stars. Next up is Judora. Judora is another fairy, one of the best cards in the game. Judora lets you play cards out of your discard and void them after they are played, which is really good. And one combo that people, I think, sleep on is being able to replay hot dogs. If you discard a hot dog off of a ghost effect, you can use said hot dog as long as you have Judora on the field. And Judora can be played when being discarded or sent as well. Playing Judora for free and being able to recycle all of those cards that you've already used feel really good. And for that, Judora gets our first 5-star ranking. Next up on the list is Marina. Marina is suffering from not enough support. Marina has text, which feels pretty cool. She allows all potions that require a dice roll. She automatically causes them to be successes, which is fine. However, there's not enough potions in the game currently to make Marina really shine. I think in the future there's going to be some really cool stuff that can make Marina more viable. As of right now, I'm giving Marina a very generous 2-star. I'm hoping we get to change that in the future because she does have a very cool ability. Next up is Naya. Naya is the most controversial card in Neopets Battledome TCG. Naya's absolutely busted. I wish I could give more than 5 stars, but I can't. You have to be playing Naya if you want to keep up with the competitive decks. Otherwise, you put yourself at a severe disadvantage. Her ability to search out any paintbrush and let you play it is absurd, along with giving additional stats. Rainbow being +2 to each of their stats. Absolutely disgusting. Naya is just a wild card. I'm kind of at the point with Naya where I don't want to put her in my deck when I go to locals, because not everyone at locals has a Naya, and whenever I play it, I just feel really bad. So, Naya for me, yeah, best card in the game for sure. I've won rounds by playing Naya and just never training. She is that good. So, 5 stars for Naya. Hashtag ban Naya. Next up is Queen Fiora. Queen Fiora, absolutely insane staple for the Battle Fairy deck. I even experimented with Queen Fiora in other decks, where I would have literally just Queen Fiora and the Battle Fairy Sword. I've teched in just 2 of those in Queen Fiora before, and it's pretty good to just splash into non-fairy decks. But in fairy decks, she's absolutely absurd. Anytime you reveal a card, you can play it up to once per turn, and your Battle Fairy equipment cards all do that. Your Lightning Lenny, your Blackwing, all those cards make Fiora insane. Any way to be able to play more than 1 card per turn is really good, and Queen Fiora lets you do that pretty consistently. Not to mention, this in combination with the Battle Fairy Shield lets you play cards on your opponent's turn. Wow, that's crazy. 5 stars for Queen Fiora. And next up is Soup Fairy. Now, Soup Fairy is a great card. Not every deck plays Soup Fairy. I find myself not playing Soup Fairy in every deck. But Soup Fairy is amazing when you draw on turn 1. You can play her for free, immediately draw off of her effect, and each turn subsequently, provided you're not drawing off of like Usul Defender or any other cards, you'll just be able to continuously draw 2 cards every turn, because you'll be playing a card and you'll be training with a Code Stone. Soup Fairy is an amazing early game card for card consistency. During rounds 2 and 3, she tends to be a dead draw. Due to the sheer consistency of other cards, Soup Fairy finds herself sitting in your hand with nothing to do, though that doesn't necessarily mean that she is completely useless. If you're playing a ghost deck, you can discard her for an additional +2 attack or defense, and fairies can put her back to do the same. So Soup Fairy, I think, is pretty good. I don't think she's like a meta-defining card. She's just there. And for a card that costs 0, that on average draws you 3 to 4 cards, is pretty good. I'm excited to see the Soup Fairy name reveal, by the way. TNT teased in the last AMA that the Soup Fairy does have a name. What's her name, and will we get a reprint of this card with her actual name on it? I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. But all in all, Soup Fairy's pretty good. I'm going to give her a 4 stars. Alright, and on to the legends. We have Aishina. Aishina is 1 star. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, return them to the top and or bottom of your deck in any order. Wow! This card is a -1. I don't see any reason to play this card. You could argue to me, Bobby, what if I'm playing a fairy deck? I could stack the fairy, the equipment on top of my deck. I mean, any other card does this better. The problem with Aishina is if you're really gonna do it for that value, you're better off replacing this with another card, because you're not gonna be doing that till turn 3, turn 4, and other cards just do it better. Aishina is one of the worst legends in the game. I hope I'm proven wrong someday, but as of right now, I don't think Aishina is playable. Maybe in the future something will change. That comes up to our next card, Bruce Avenger. We immediately see Aishina outclassed by Bruce Avenger. So Bruce Avenger draws 2, and you stack 1 card on top of your deck. So Aishina, you get to see 1 additional card. Oh boy. Bruce Avenger, you get to draw 2 cards, and then you can stack your deck with whatever you want. If you have like a Battle Fairy equipment in play, and you want to stack an equipment on top, you can definitely do that. If you have a 5-cost card like Khan the Unstoppable in your hand and you don't want that, you can just put that to the bottom of your deck. Bruce Avenger is pretty good. It is a +0 on its effect. You know, you're only essentially you're drawing 2 cards from your deck, but you're basically breaking even in terms of card advantage on it. So for that reason, I give it 4 stars. It's great in the fairy deck. Other decks, I wouldn't recommend playing. Corbat Defender! Wow, what does it do? Draw 2 cards from your deck. 5 stars! It's good! It's one of the best cards you can get on turn 1. It's nihilable. It's just pot of greed. Wow, turns out that's pretty good. Lightning Lenny, 4 stars. Lightning Lenny is another great card for the Battle Fairy archetype. You get to reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. Wow, it already outclasses Aishina because you get to add one of those to your hand. Lightning Lenny does have to put the cards on the bottom of the deck, but you get to pick what you want. Also, if you reveal anything off of Lightning Lenny, you get to play it. If you reveal your Battle Fairy staff on turn 1, wow, that's really good value. That's crazy. Lightning Lenny is pretty good. I wouldn't put him in just any deck, only in decks that really synergize heavily with reveal, or if you're really picky about what you want. I think 4 stars is the perfect rating for our Lightning Lenny. Next up is Dr. Flexo. Perhaps the best 2-cost card in the game. 5 stars, easy. It is a +2, and just like Bruce Avenger, you get to stack a card on top of your deck to proc your Battle Fairy equipment, or put what you don't want in your hand on the bottom of the deck, so you can go back into it with Iron Skeeth or Sergeant Brexus. Amazing! It's just a great card, awesome consistency. A level 2 for essentially digging 3 cards into your deck. That is really good. Easy 5-star ranking. I don't see how every deck isn't playing 2 of these. They should all be playing Dr. Flexo. Absolutely insane card. And next up is Org the Great. Org the Great is interesting in that you get to search for exactly what you want. Being able to search for a Defenders of Neopia Legend, you can make sure that you have Usul Defender for turn 3, or maybe you want to search out Sergeant Brexus to make sure on turn 4 you get your Judge Hog off. It's pretty versatile. I think it gets outclassed by other cards like Dr. Flexo, and just other card draw in general. I personally like to just see a different card that will push more advantage than what Orig does. And for that, I only give Orig 2 stars. Next up on the list is Siona. Siona's really cool in that she's one of the only cards that allows you to recycle the legends in your discard. There are cards like Vera and Muka that lets you replay it, and Ghostly Hot Dog that lets you get a card back. But Siona, it lets you get 2 cards back. Siona is pretty interesting because she's one of the only people with that ability. That said, I think Siona suffers the same issues that Money Tree has. Siona is going to get a lot more value in rounds 2 or 3 than in round 1 when you've already established your discard pile. You cannot use Siona effectively round 1, which means if you see Siona in your opening hand, it's effectively a dead draw, and I don't personally like playing cards that I can't use in round 1. For that reason, I'm giving Siona just 3 stars. Great versatility though. The 2-drop pool is pretty lackluster, so I think Siona is definitely a little bit on the better side than the other 2-cost cards in the set. Next up is Torchio. 1 star. Torchio is a very interesting card because it shuts off your opponent's equipment. If your opponent has like Battle Fairy equipment, they won't be able to use their reveal abilities, nor can they use other abilities off of like the Judora cards. You know, they can't pitch them for their additional effect. Torchio does not stop static changes, so if your opponent has a Judora's Cursed Sword, they will still have the +2 attack. Now, personally, I don't think Torchio really has enough going for it to make it work. Now, with Neopets Battledome TCG being an eternal format, Torchio will only get better in time, and I think there's going to be a time and place for Torchio. However, these rankings are based off the current game today as it stands, and as it stands, Torchio does not have a chance to make it in any deck lists and be effective. So, 1 star. And that leads us to our next card, Blackwing. Blackwing is an absolute powerhouse. Being able to dig 5 cards in and selecting 2 of those to add to your hand is really good. This card is amazing for Battle Fairy. You're going to be triggering something on almost every time you reveal off of this. You're going to be able to stack your deck to trigger your other equipment. You'll be able to just add 2 of those cards to your hand. It provides a lot of options if you have Queen Fiora out in the field, and you can play this card in any deck. I think Blackwing can be just as competitive in like a Judora list, like a Ghost list, or other ones. It's really good if you don't want to see specific cards in your deck. You want to leave them in there to be able to combo off. Then Blackwing is definitely a great card to make sure your hand doesn't get clogged with those pieces. So for that reason, Blackwing gets 5 stars. Great 3-drop. The next card, I think people are sleeping on Captain K. I think Captain K is nuts. So what Captain K does is it lets you see into your opponent's hand and rip 1 card out and shuffle it back into the deck. So not only do you get to remove maybe a very important combo piece, maybe it's round 2 and the round's about to be over and you Captain K them and you send their Naya back into their deck. Oh my goodness, now your opponent's going into the final round. They're Nihilist, you drop your Naya, and then you just win the game. I think Captain K is absolutely insane. I think people are undervaluing card information. Knowing what card is in your opponent's hand can lead you to really be able to outplay and win the game. I don't personally play them in my aggro list because the decks are so fast that Captain K is a little bit too slow. But if you're playing a control strategy or like a discard strategy, I think Captain K is a staple in those lists. But other people haven't been playing Captain K, so maybe there's something I'm missing. But the Yu-Gi-Oh person inside me says Captain K is busted. I'm gonna give him 3 stars. Next up is Cow Defender. Cow Defender is pretty sick. If you have 6 or more cards in your hand, you get to attack twice. That effect is pretty good. If you have a Neopet with 10 attack on there, you're attacking for 20 that turn. Wow, that's pretty great. Cow Defender is really great in aggressive strategies. Really nice to be able to play her to end the game quickly. You do have the drawback that you have to have 6 cards in your hand, but if you're playing Cow Defender, you're playing a deck with a lot of consistency. Oftentimes, you're not going to see yourself having less than 6 cards in your hand. And for that, 3 stars. Next up, we have the Masked Intruder. The Masked Intruder is like Ishina, except you get to play one of those cards. Wow. So for 3, you get to play a card from the top 3 of your deck. Why would you play this when you could just replace it with an actual playable card instead of hoping the top 3 cards of your deck are playable? A lot of times you play this, there's going to be code stones that are mixed in with what you reveal. If you reveal 3 code stones, then this card is just dead. You can't play them. I think this card is too slow. Its effect is just not good enough. For that, I give it 1 star. Next up is Usul Defender. Easy, 5 stars. Usul Defender. Draw 4 cards from the deck. Wow, that's pretty good. That's just pretty good, you know. You play Usul Defender in every deck. I found even in discard strategies, you play 2 Usul Defender. Wow, crazy. What an amazing card. So much advantage. You guys know my favorite pet is Usul. I am so glad that an Usul is such a powerhouse. Amazing. I absolutely love him. So good. Next up, we have Mammoth. Mammoth is pretty good for your aggressive strategies. I wouldn't play him in like a control deck or anything like that. But decks that get you to 10 attack quick and you just want to beat down your opponent, this achieves that really easily. So 3 stars. Next up is Sergeant Brexus. Sergeant Brexus is a 4 cost that lets you dig into your deck and play any Defender of Neopia card. Wow, that's crazy. You can use it to cheat out Judge Hogg 1 turn earlier than you should, which is absolutely insane. However, if you've exhausted your Hogg, or if it's sitting in your hand, you can search out something like Usul Defender instead to draw 4 cards, or any other Defender of Neopia, depending on the situation. So, I think this card's amazing. I think you can sprinkle it in any deck because the versatility of being able to just search out and play Usul Defender or Judge Hogg or other defenders, just amazing. It's just amazing. 5 stars. Speaking of which, next up is the Judge Hogg. Judge Hogg, amazing card. Reveal 5 cards from your deck. Then you get to play any number of them and add the remainder to your hand. Absolutely absurd card. With the game, you can only be able to play 1 card, having the ability to play up to 5 cards in a turn. Wow, that seems pretty good to me. Especially when you get to cheat this out on turn 4 with Sergeant Brexus. He's just an amazing card. The amount of advantage that you can get off of this is just absurd. Judge Hogg is a crazy combo card. Being able to combine this, maybe you combine it with Cow Defenders or Mammoths to get multiple attacks. You can use it to play multiples of equipment. If you play Judge Hogg and you reveal some Nova Blades or some Battle Fairy equipment, just being able to play those all at once is pretty good. With that being said, 5 stars for the Hog. Next up is Bank Manager. 1 star. The problem with Bank Manager is you're not going to get any value off of him on turn 1. You're only going to see value off of him on turn 2 and onwards. Here's my issue with Bank Manager. If you play an equipment on turn 1, you get to play this on turn 2. Wow, you draw 1 card from your deck. On turn 3, if you have 2 equipment, Wow, you can draw 2 cards. It's just Combat Defender. Bank Manager could see fringe play if equipments are absurd, if they're being turboed out in a way to be able to maybe draw 3 or 4 cards on turn 2 with it. Otherwise, Bank Manager just gets outclassed by every other card draw card in the game. At best, maybe you could turn it into an Usul Defender if your opponent is also playing equipment. But by then, it's going to be like turn 3, turn 4. I mean, you could just play Usul Defender or any other card you could replace this with that'll actually be useful. So, with that being said, only 1 star for Bank Manager. Next card on the list is Harrion Blueplum. 5 stars, easy 5 stars. Right now, this is the only way to help with Codestone consistency. You reveal the top 5 cards of your deck, and you add any Codestones that way. That's pretty good. On average, you usually get about 2 Codestones each time you do this. Sometimes you get more. There are times where you get 0, and that really sucks. This does trigger your Battle Fairy equipment. If you play this on turn 1, grab yourself a couple Codestones, play a Battle Fairy Staff. That's pretty crazy. Easy 5 stars. Every deck should be playing this. Some people argue that you should only play 1. I've seen someone even say they don't play any at all. I think this card's an absolute staple. Every deck should be playing it. Otherwise, it could be tough to keep up on Codestone. So this card is probably one of the best Nilo targets in the game. I highly recommend having him. Next up is Hubert. Hubert has a very unique ability that lets you search out any hot dog in the deck. We already reviewed Orig the Great. Orig suffers because of the limited capacity of only being able to search 1 card. However, Hubert is a 1-cost card, so when you play him when you're level 1, he doesn't feel so bad. Not to mention, I think the power level potential on grabbing something like a Hot Dog of Justice or a Hubert special Hot Dog can really play mind games with your opponent and maybe cause them to misplay trying to bait that out. Then they hold back on their more powerful cards. An argument could also be made where you search a teeny Hot Dog to be able to push that extra damage. I know one person at locals really likes playing Hubert, and I'm going to be honest, I've lost games against Hubert because he searched Hot Dog of Justice, and it completely ruined my game plan. So I think Hubert does have a place, and for that reason, I give him 3 stars. Next up is Pant Devil's Evil Twin. Target 1 card in your discard and play it. That's pretty good. I think this card gets outclassed. I would rather have Vera or Muka in my deck because they also let you replay cards and not just equipment. It could be any card. I think if you were to play Pant Devil's Evil Twin, I think it would have to be after you're already playing 2 copies of both Vera and Muka. Pant Devil's Evil Twin does let you recycle those 1 and 2 cost equipments a turn sooner than Vera or Muka could, which means it does have something unique to it. And for that reason, I'll give it 2 stars, as there is some sort of potential there. Next up is Shop Wizard. Shop Wizard lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck and select 1 card that you determined that you wanted prior to looking at those cards, whether it being equipment, food, a paintbrush, or a potion. However, you have to see one of those cards. On top of that, you only, at the very best, you break even in terms of card advantage. If you could search Codestones with this, maybe it would be a little bit better. However, I think Shop Wizard is way too high roll to even be considered playing, and for that I'm gonna give it 1 star. Breadmaster! Breadmaster is probably the craziest card in the set. Shuffle 3 cards back into your deck to play anything from your deck. Wow, that's so wild. One of the most common uses for Breadmaster is to play Breadmaster on turn 1, shuffle Naya and or Rainbow Paintbrush back into your deck, and then you can play Naya. And because the rainbow paintbrush was put from your inventory to your deck, you can just search the paintbrush off Naya. Wow, that's crazy. What's even crazier is playing Nilo and searching for Breadmaster and then doing that combo on top of it. Breadmaster basically reads 2 and 3 copies of Naya, because Nilo can search Breadmaster. Nilo basically reads copy 4 and 5 of Naya. So having 4 different opportunities to be able to search at most for your Naya. Absolutely absurd. Breadmaster can be used in other ways as well. I've used Breadmaster to search Sergeant Brexis, to play Judge Hogg or Iron Skeeth, to play Khan the Unstoppable. Someone pointed out that you can play Breadmaster to shuffle 3 cards back into the deck and then search Money Tree with it, and then you're just getting those cards back. I guess you could do that too. It's just a very funny interaction there. But Breadmaster being the most versatile card in the game, I'm gonna give him 5 stars. He is difficult to use. You get punished really hard if the card that you search off of it gets Hot Dog of Justice. You basically go -4 in that case. So you got to be careful when you play it. You have to be confident that your play is going to go through. Other than that, Breadmaster, absurd card. Next up, we have Barry. Barry is an absolute meme. Roll 10 dice. On every crit, your opponent takes 1 damage. On every 1, you take 1 damage. This is clearly a casino card. It's meant to be on the highlight reels. Fun fact, when I was at Gen Con, I played against somebody who was playing a burn deck, and they played Barry. And they rolled 10 dice. They didn't roll a single crit, and they rolled 1-1. Wow, what a crazy card. With that said, Barry, 1 star. Next up is Calvara. Calvara lets you search your deck for a potion. Wow. To go break even on cards that are suboptimal. I don't see this getting any play. Now, in the future, perhaps we might see morphing potions or other potions with unique effects that are more consistent than what we have now. Maybe there's a place for Calvara in those kind of sets. But, like I explained earlier, we are ranking these cards based off of today's meta, which means Calvara gets 1 star. Next up is Charisse. Charisse is a card that lets you draw 1 card from your deck for each Defenders of Neopia Legend in your discard pile. Very unique effect. If you load up your discard pile, it could be pretty out of hand how many cards you could potentially draw off this. This card suffers the same as Money Tree, and that if you have this in your opening hand, it's just not going to give you enough advantage. I would rather see this card slot be used for something else. I mean, you have to have at least 4 in your discard pile for this to even be on the same playing field as Usul Defender, but at that point I would rather just play Usul Defender, or at the point where this card starts to exceed Usul Defender, you've probably already drawn your entire deck from Usul Defenders and other draw legends. So for that reason, Charisse gets 1 star. And then we have Punchbag Bob, the favorite in the Battledome. You know, he's there to take hits. If Punchbag Bob wasn't a high roll, then maybe he could see some play. The problem is you could play Punchbag Bob and then never see a turn with him sticking around to take the hits for you. If you got at least 1 guaranteed turn, I think he'll be more playable. Unfortunately, because of that reason that he only works if you get a success, I give Punchbag Bob 1 star. Next up is Dr. Death. Dr. Death is a really sick card, a very unique mechanic. You're basically abandoning your pet, you're abandoning the round and conceding. The benefit to doing that with Dr. Death is you get to grab all the cards on the field and put it back to your hand. So you can start the next round with an insane advantage. Is that good enough? No. Dr. Death is a 5-cost card, and a lot of times pets aren't making it to level 5. So it's too slow to even make you lose the game. Shout out to the person on Discord that tried to make Dr. Death Turbo. I think you're a legend, and you know, best of luck if you did indeed make that deck. 1 star. Next up is Castralis. Castralis, draw 2 cards and discard 1 card. That's pretty good. I only give him 4 stars because you're still breaking even on Castralis. Some of the discard effects only proc when you have the card's level. So in order to get the maximum value off of Castralis, you're going to have to match the level of the card that you're discarding, meaning any of Judora's equipment, you have to be at that level. So if you're at like level 3, you can play Castralis, discard Cursed Sword, and then the Cursed Sword plays itself. The only problem is you're playing it on level 3 when you could be playing on like Eyes of Dark or at Usul Defender or really any other card in that slot. You're just gonna outclass Castralis. So Castralis really shines not on level 1, and just because of that I give him 4 stars, but he is still pretty good. Discard your Judora's potion, your purple blob potion, and you just get some extra damage. That's pretty good. It's pretty good on its own. Next up is the Tax Beast. Tax Beast is very funny because your opponent is forced to discarding a card, and you get to draw a card, so you stay even on card advantage. The only issue with Tax Beast is your opponent gets to pick what card they discard. So if they're running a Judora deck, they could just pitch a Judora or Judora equipment if they have the level, and just plus off of that advantage. So for that reason, I give Tax Beast 3 stars. I don't personally like him, but if you're playing a discard strategy, maybe you still splash him in to get those extra cards out of your opponent's hand. This card could be oppressive later on in the game after you've been discarding your opponent's hand if they're down to like 1 or 2 cards, and then you play Tax Beast, and you get to watch all hope leaving your opponent's eyes. So he's pretty good, but I think he's only good in those situations. Next up is the Pant Devil. Target 1 of your opponent's equipment and discard it. Wow. Simple effect. I think Pant Devil is not good enough. You might as well just play Muka. The only time you would play Pant Devil is if you have 2 Muka in your deck already. Maybe in the future, if equipment's being turboed out at an insane rate, Pant Devil could see play. But in today's game, I think Pant Devil is not good enough. You're not really using it to destroy 1 or 2 cost cards. You could, but getting rid of the higher end ones is really what you want to see, and Muka being able to be played at level 3 just does it better because you get to replay cards from your discards. So for that reason, 1 star. Next up is Iriki. Iriki suffers the same issues as Orig the Great. You do get to search your deck for 1 villain of Neopia and put him to your hand. It's pretty good. It breaks even. You do get specifically what you want. Maybe you want to set yourself up for that turn 3 Eyes of Dark into discarding some equipment. Maybe you want to set up Iron Skeith in your hand so you can con your opponent on turn 5. It guarantees you having those plays. I think Iriki is just outclassed by Dr. Flexo and other cards. So for that reason, only 2 stars for Iriki. Maybe there will be better application for him in the future when more villains come out. Next up, we have Sarah and Daisy. Sarah and Daisy basically reads, go fetch mom. You play Sarah and Daisy, and you discard Judora from the deck, and you get to play Judora. Wow, that's wild. That's absolutely crazy. 5 stars, easy 5 stars. You can splash this into any deck that plays Judora. Late game, you can use Sarah and Daisy to search out Judora's potion, to tack on an extra 2 damage to their pet. Extremely versatile. It's a great card. Absolutely great card. Next up is Balthazar. Balthazar has an extremely unique and powerful effect to steal your opponent's fairy that's in play. When you play Balthazar, you're playing the other player's fairy. So let's say you steal their Naya. That means you get to search your deck for a paintbrush and play it and get all the advantages, and your opponent loses all those stat points that Naya was providing for them. It could really swing the battle. Unfortunately, Balthazar costs 3, and in a battle where your opponent plays Naya, they're probably comboing it with like a cow or an Irie that already have massive stats, and you've probably already taken a bunch of damage. So at a cost of 3, I feel Balthazar is a little bit too slow to be able to turn the tide against your opponent playing Naya. However, it's still pretty good. Mrs. Bobby has had a lot of funny moments where she steals her opponent's Naya with Balthazar and basically gets a second Naya. So I'm going to give him 2 stars. He will gain a lot more power in the future when more fairies come out. He's a pretty good card. He's pretty good. Next up is Eyes of Dark. Eyes of Dark is like Usul Defender, except you only get to draw 3 cards from your deck. But you do get the added ability of discarding up to 2 cards from your inventory to your discard, allowing you to proc your Judora equipment or other discard effects. I give him 4 stars because you're primarily just using him to draw the cards. If you can get the bonuses off the discard, that's great. You're probably going to be playing a deck that will provide you such advantage, but he is still pretty good just being in the deck to draw 3 cards with not having any drawback to it. Next up is Kasuki Lu. This card lets you place your hand into the bottom of your deck and redraw it. The problem with Kasuki Lu is it's a -1 built in because you're playing this card, so you're not drawing up to the number of cards you have in your hand. Prior to playing Kasuki Lu, being a minus feels pretty bad. With that reason, I think Kasuki Lu is bad. You should not be playing him. 1 star. Lady Frostbite. Lady Frostbite is one of the best legends in the game. You get to freeze your opponent. That means they can't attack. Wow, what a wild card. Lady Frostbite can be countered with a well-timed Flaming Hot Dog or the Shield of Scorching if they don't have those in play, or is not able to counter with a Flaming Hot Dog. Being able to skip your opponent's battle is enough to be able to turn the tides. That 1 turn that they miss could mean the difference, especially if you're in danger of losing the next round. So, with that being said, Lady Frostbite, insane. You could play her in any deck of your choosing. You probably should play her in any deck. She's just that good, and being at 3 cost is really good. Next up is Muka. Muka has a very unique effect, like the Pant Devil, where you get to destroy one of your opponent's equipment, and it has the Vera effect on it. Now, one issue with Muka is if your opponent isn't playing equipment, he's just a dead draw in your hand. He's just kind of sitting there. If your opponent is not playing equipment, I guess if you're playing like a Judora deck, you can discard them for like the Ghost ability to gain an extra attack. A really funny combo is if you already have Muka in your discard and you play Muka, you destroy one equipment, you recycle the next Muka with its own effect, you destroy another equipment, and then you can play something else in your discard on top of that. Which is pretty crazy. So Muka can get out of hand. Being able to replay cards in your discard is a really strong effect. The problem with Muka being is that your opponent has to be playing equipment, means I only give it 4 stars because of the dead draw potential of this. And that leads up to the next card, the Ghost Loop. Until the end of your opponent's next turn, when any number of cards are discarded from your inventory, deal 1 damage to your opponent's Neopet. The problem with the Ghost Loop is it's too slow. If your Ghost ability was discarding instead of sending, this card could see more play. The problem is they're not. When you send cards with the Ghost ability, it does not trigger the Ghost Loop or other cards that say when a card is discarded, do X. I will say there's a very funny combo deck that uses Judge Hog to reveal the Ghost Loop and other cards that do discard. So in instances like that, I think this card is very funny. It's a very great highlight reel card, but it does have deadly potential in those strategies, dealing possibly double-digit damage when you combine this with Judora's Potion and Purple Blob's Potion. It gets really out of hand really quick. So for those moments, I give him 2 stars. Uzaro, another Usul in the set. Very cool Usul. Your opponent randomly discards 2 cards from the inventory. That's pretty good. Unlike the Tax Beast, your opponent can't choose the cards that are being discarded, which is a lot better than your opponent choosing a card to get discarded. So you could easily discard their main combo pieces or cards that they're holding on to that they're planning to play next turn. Being able to rip 2 of those cards out were pretty good. Uzaro only gets 3 stars from me. You kind of have to build your deck around playing Uzaro and the other discard effects to really see the value shine. And there's also another discard effect that we will see coming up that is even better than Uzaro. So for that, 3 stars. Next up is Vera. You get to target a card or discard and play it. Wow. 5 stars. Now Bobby, Muka does the same thing as Vera, but gets to destroy 1 equipment as well. What gives? Well, Vera doesn't have that restriction that your opponent has to have an equipment. You get to just play Vera. What do you play with Vera? You play Lady Frostbite. And then you play another one after that to play Lady Frostbite again. And then you use Judora to play Vera to play Lady Frostbite. And then you can use Judora to play Lady Frostbite. Wow, suddenly your opponent doesn't get to attack for 6 turns straight. That's crazy. Vera, absolutely absurd card. You can play Vera in every deck and be able to see value. Being able to replay any card in your deck is absurd. So yeah, easy 5 stars for me. And here's the card I was talking about earlier, the Angry Tax Beast. He's a 4 cost, I give him 4 stars. Angry Tax Beast has the same effect as Uzaro, where your opponent randomly discards 2 cards, but you get to draw 2 cards as well. So you get to replenish your hand while your opponent loses their hand. So you can do the same thing with Vera, where you play Vera and you play Angry Tax Beast again. You continue refilling your hand while your opponent loses their hand, and you can combo off with Judora that way. Angry Tax Beast can be really oppressive. It empties your opponent's hand really fast. It's a really good combo card with that. And I'm kind of shocked this combo doesn't see more play than it does. It's a very good card, very good combo. Highly recommend playing them. Next up is Iron Skeith. Iron Skeith gives you ability to search any of your villains of Neopia and play it. You can search out Khan and play Khan the Unstoppable on turn 4. Absolutely wild. 5 stars. Any deck that plays Khan the Unstoppable plays Iron Skeith. Not only that, you can use Iron Skeith to search out Lady Frostbite and start the freeze engine going with recycling them. And then the next turn, you can just play Iron Skeith off Judora to search other stuff. Iron Skeith can help facilitate your out-of-control combos very easily. And for that, Iron Skeith gets 5 stars. And that leads us to Khan the Unstoppable himself. Khan the Unstoppable basically reads win the round. Not always, but a lot of times he does. Send all cards in your opponent's side of the Battledome to their discard. That includes Code Stones. You're resetting them to level 0. They lose all their equipment, their fairies, while you still have a complete board. It's pretty crazy tempo swing. You can use it in the early stages of a battle with Iron Skeith. If you want to remove their cards, so they have to spend more cards if they want to invest trying to win, if you're playing a slower deck. Or if you're looking to secure the win in 2 to 3 turns, Khan the Unstoppable is great at doing that. Because of that, 5 stars. Next up, we have the equipment. And starting out is the Battle Fairy Staff. Battle Fairy Staff is pretty good. Most of the time, you're going to be playing in your Battle Fairy deck. It is a turn 1 equipment that when you reveal a card, and if it's an equipment, you get 2 attack. That's pretty good. Battle Fairy Staff is not always played in every Battle Fairy deck. I personally would play it. I think it's pretty good. Having the option for a turn 1 equipment and high rolling on turn 1 means you could get an early massive amount of damage against your opponent. I think it's good enough. Maybe stacking something with Aethia or the Fairy ability to guarantee yourself 2 attack in the later stage of the round. Means it's good early and it's good late game. So, Battle Fairy Staff, 3 stars. Next up is the Ghost Loop Shield. Whenever a card is discarded, you gain 2 defense. So it doesn't work with the Ghost ability. It'll work if you have like Eyes of Dark or other discard effects. I'm going to lump in the Ghost Loop Sword as well, because that suffers the same effect. And for that reason, Ghost Loop Shield and Sword, 1 star. Next up is Amulet of Chaos. This one's an absolute meme, just like Barry. There's 6 different effects depending on what you roll on the dice. It could be good, it could be bad. You could damage yourself, you could heal yourself, or you could freeze your opponent. This has a completely wild amount of abilities. I've personally tested Amulet of Chaos. It is incredibly suboptimal. It is a very funny card. Building a meme deck to play against your friends. You should definitely throw this card in there because it's very funny. Otherwise, 1 star. Next up is the Battle Fairy Shield. Battle Fairy Shield's a pretty good card. It lets you reveal 3 cards on your opponent's turn, and every equipment revealed this way, you gain 1 defense. That's pretty good. If you have Queen Fiora out, it basically means you get to play a card on your opponent's turn, which is pretty wild. Battle Fairy Shield played in that way means you get a lot of value, and because of that, 3 stars. I think if you don't own Queen Fiora, I think Battle Fairy Shield isn't good enough to make the cut. But if you have Queen Fiora, then you should definitely be playing Battle Fairy Shield. Next up is Battle Hammer. Battle Hammer, if you have 6 or more cards in your inventory, you can discard 1 card to gain 2 attack. I think this card's too slow. I would honestly rather play a sturdy blue sword from the starter decks than playing Battle Hammer. You could argue this helps proc your ghost equipment. I don't think that's good enough. Plus, you have to be able to maintain having 6 or more cards. Maybe if you combo this off with Soup Fairy, you'll be able to stay above that threshold every turn. I think it's too slow. I would rather play any other equipment than Battle Hammer. For that reason, 1 star. Next up is the Blade of the Battle Fairy. Excellent card for your Battle Fairy deck. Revealing the top 3 cards of your deck, you get to gain 1 attack for every equipment revealed that way. Digging through 3 cards of your deck puts you at pretty good odds for revealing other Battle Fairy equipment and playing them from their reveal effects. It's just a really good card, very consistent, and for that reason, it gets 4 stars. Next up is Blue Frost Cannon. Roll a 6-sided die, and on a crit, you freeze your opponent. Wow. This card reads, on average, 1 of every 6 turns, you get to freeze your opponent. I don't think I have to explain why that's bad. You can just trust me when I say 1 star. Moving on to Judora's Cursed Coin. This is a 2-cost equipment, but it does have the ability that when it is sent from your inventory or deck to the graveyard, you can play it. So if you have this in your hand and use your ghost pet's ability to send it for +2 attack, you get to play this card, which is pretty good. This has the benefit of being able to block your opponent's critical hits, which is very unique. There's not many ways of blocking crits. Judora's Cursed Coin has such effect, making it very unique, and on average, you're probably blocking like 2 damage with this, which is pretty good for not having to pay a cost. For that reason, 3 stars. Next up is Purple Sticky Hand. During your preparation phase, you may roll 1 die. On a success, swap this card with an opponent's equipment. The problem with Purple Sticky Hand is it requires your opponent to be playing equipment. On top of that, it's only a 50% chance on actually swapping it with your opponent's equipment. With that said, when it's their turn, they could just use it to swap your equipment back. So I think Purple Sticky Hand is unplayable, 1 star. Red Scorchstone basically allows you to block 2 damage in a turn. It's not restricted to crits. It does block that damage. I have seen Battle Fairy lists that use Scorch Stones. It just gives you a little bit extra survivability. But all it does is heal 2 HP. And is that good enough? I don't think so, which is why I leave it at 2 stars. Maybe if you're playing a stall deck with like the Nova Blades, it could be good enough because it'll help you survive more turns. But otherwise, I don't think this card is good enough to see play. Next up is Shield of Scorching. Shield of Scorching is the other card in the game that allows you to be immune to being frozen. Now, it is important to distinct being immune from being frozen does not remove being frozen. So if your opponent Lady Frostbite the turn before and you play Shield of Scorching, you don't get de-thawed. Now, the other effect of it is if your opponent deals damage to you during battle, you get to deal 1 damage back. And that could mean a lot if you're playing a very defensive pet like Jub Jub, or if you're playing long drawn out battles and your opponent is also playing a low powered Neopet. Taking 1 or 2 damage a turn and reflecting 1 damage back will give you a huge advantage in that battle. I personally really like Shield of Scorching. I think it's a really good card. It doesn't fit in every deck, but the ones that do really make it shine. You can put it in aggro so you can't get frozen, and you can put it into your stall decks or high defense decks to really get that reflect damage value. And for that, I give them 3 stars. Next up is the Battle Fairy Dagger. This is perhaps the best Battle Fairy equipment in the game. You reveal 1 card off the top of your deck, and if it's an equipment, you deal 2 direct damage to your opponent's pet. This is absolutely absurd. It can get out of hand really fast. One unique thing about equipment is if your opponent freezes you, you can still use your equipment. So, if you're frozen, Battle Fairy Dagger will still give you the opportunity to deal damage to your opponent even though you can't attack. That effect is absolutely absurd. Every Battle Fairy deck needs to be playing 2 copies of this. Unfortunately, only fits in the Battle Fairy archetype. So, with that being said, 4 stars for this card. Next up is Blue Scorchstone. If you love Red Scorchstone, you can play the Blue Scorchstone. Your opponent's battle phase, while you take damage, you can send this card to your discard to reduce the damage by 3. Wow. I think this card isn't good enough. There are plenty of better cards to fit in that 3-cost slot than to just heal for 3. So, with that being said, 1 star for Blue Scorchstone. Next up is the Duelist Dagger. During battle, you can roll 1 die on a success. You deal 1 damage to your opponent. This card is strictly worse than Nova Blade. Nova Blade is the exact same thing, except you get to heal 1 if you have a success, which is infinitely better. So, because it's completely outclassed by another card in the same set, I'm going to give Duelist Dagger 1 star. Next up is Judora's Bewitched Ring. This has the effect where if you discard it, you get to play it. It works off of the Ghost ability, so if you send it to gain +2 attack or +2 defense, this card will also go into play. You can also pitch this card to gain 4 defense for that round if your opponent is going off. Maybe they're using Mammoth or other effects. You'll be able to get some extra value out of Judora's Bewitched Ring. And for that reason, I give it 3 stars. It's good in that deck specifically. Most people are only playing like 1 copy of Judora's Bewitched Ring. You can play 2 if you really want that extra defense boost. But defense as a stat is valued usually less than attack. So for that reason, the ring only gets 3 stars. Which leads us to the next card, Judora's Cursed Sword. It's basically Judora's Bewitched Ring, except better. You get +2 attack, and you can send it to the discard to get +4 attack this round. That's crazy. It gives you a lot of attack really fast if you want to burst down your opponent. And for that reason, 4 stars. And next up is Nova Blade. We just talked about Nova Blade. You get to roll 1 die on a success. You deal 1 damage to your opponent and you heal 1 health. This card is pretty good. If you're able to proc it multiple times in a round, it starts getting out of control with how much you're healing, especially when you combo it with the other Nova Blades. And for that reason, I will give it 3 stars. Next up is the Shield of Reflection. This has a very unique effect, which on your opponent's turn, if you roll any critical successes, you're dealing that much damage to your opponent. Which is pretty crazy. I have played this card. I do actively play this card in a Starry equipment deck, which features the Nova Blades. I do play one of these Shield of Reflections. It's really great if you have very high defense cards. I had a round where I rolled 5 crits on defense, and I essentially did 5 damage on my opponent's turn, which is pretty crazy. I don't think Shield of Reflection is an auto-include at all in any sort of deck. Maybe just in those scenarios where you're playing that exact deck, this card you could put in. For that reason, I only give Shield of Reflection 2 stars for its unreliability. Next up is Tanglenut Gun. Speaking of unreliability, during your battle phase, you can roll 1 die, and on a success, your opponent's Neopet speed becomes 0. And on paper, that sounds amazing. Personally, I think Tanglenut Gun is too slow. If you get unlucky and miss on those rolls, then the card just does absolutely nothing. I would rather play other equipment in the 3 slot other than Tanglenut Gun. For that reason, 1 star. Next up is the Black Frost Cannon. Same thing as Tanglenut Gun, except it freezes your opponent, which is pretty crazy. Unfortunately, it is a 4-cost card. A 4-cost to freeze your opponent 50% of the time is not good enough. It's way too slow. 1 star. Next up is Blade of Supernova. Just like the regular Blade of Nova, this one you roll 2 dice, and on each success you deal 1 damage and heal 1. So on average, you're hitting that every turn, which is pretty good. I think it's good in those fairy decks that want some extra equipment to be able to proc their battle fairy equipment, and just playing them on their own is a great option. It helps stabilize, it's good against aggro. I give Blade of Supernova 3 stars. Next up is Judora's Crystal Ball. Judora's Crystal Ball reads, during your preparation phase, you may discard 1 card and look at the top 3 cards of your deck and add 1 to your inventory. During your preparation phase, you may discard 1 card, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 to your inventory, send 1 to your discard, and return 1 to the top or bottom of your deck in any order. So the Judora's Crystal Ball is nice because it helps you be very consistent on each of your turns, helps proc your discard effects very easily. You can even pitch this during your draw phase, and you can look at the top 3 cards of either player's deck, return them in any order to the top or bottom of the deck. The problem with Judora's Crystal Ball is that it's a 4 cost, which means you're going to be playing this late into the round. At that point, it's probably going to be too late to see any real value out of Judora's Crystal Ball, and because of that reason, I give it 1 star. Judora's Hourglass. It basically reads the same thing that the Frost Cannon reads. During your battle phase, you can roll 3 dice. If any of them are crits, then you freeze your opponent. Rolling 3 dice, trying to get a 6 is basically like a 50-50. Just like the Black Frost Cannon is. You also get the added benefit that you can just send this to your discard instead of rolling to guarantee a freeze on your opponent. And you get to play it off of discarding, which is pretty good. An extra card to be able to freeze your opponent is pretty good. We do play in a world where Lady Frostbite can be played like 6 turns in a row due to the replayability of Judora and other stuff, so I think Judora's Hourglass is too slow, / gets outclassed by just that combo in general, and for that reason, I give it 2 stars. Next up is the ridiculously heavy Battle Hammer. This suffers the same thing as the regular Battle Hammer. You have to consistently have 6 or more cards in your hand to be able to discard them to gain the extra power. When you're discarding 2 cards a turn, it's going to be really hard to maintain that effect. It's a very funny card because the text barely fits into the tag there at the top, which is very funny. Otherwise, 1 star. Next up is Shield of Fairyland. Shield of Fairyland has a unique ability to be able to allow you to block crits, and it being the only other card outside of Judora's Cursed Coin that allows you to block crits, it's pretty good on its own because of that effect. You could just play Shield of Fairyland in a defensive deck. You could play it into a fairy deck. The only issue is that it costs 4 to be able to use it, and because it's a 4 cost, I think it's just too slow to be able to see any real play. A lot of times I see Shield of Fairyland get revealed and just tossed back into the deck. Most of the time you don't need to go past level 3 in your Battle Fairy deck because that's the peak. Unless you're trying to play like a Conley Unstoppable or something like that, then you'll exceed level 3, but otherwise you don't really need to in those decks. I don't think Shield of Fairyland is the reason to push level 4 for. Next up is Blade of Ultranova. Just like the other blades, you roll 2 dice, and on a success, you deal 2 damage and heal 2 damage. If you're getting to the point where you're playing Blade of Ultranova, you're probably going to win the round, and I say probably because I have a very salty story on this. I had 2 Blade of Ultranovas and 1 Blade of Supernova in play, and all of them whiffed. Every single one of those 6 dies whiffed, and I lost the round after. So, because of the randomness of the blades, of Blade of Ultranova, I'm only giving it 3 stars. You really want that 5 cost card to help guarantee the win for you, and Blade of Ultranova, being RNG dependent, may not give you that. So I would rather slot other 5 cost cards in, but in the decks like the Nova Starry deck, or you could even splash 1 into your Battle Fairy deck in case you do hit level 5. Other than that, I don't see this card being like a game changer. Next up is the commemorative Battle Fairy X. This one is like the Battle Fairy Dagger. You reveal cards at the top of your deck until you reveal a non-equipment, and you deal 2 damage to your opponent for each equipment revealed that way. This card is too unreliable. I've never seen this card proc more than once. There could be effects where you stack your deck in a way that you guarantee there's multiple equipment, but that's kind of hard to do. For that reason, this card gets 1 star. Maybe in a world where there's a lot more equipment that you're playing, this could get better, but in today's game, this card is not good enough to see play. Next up is Judora's Wand. This is Judora's 5 cost equivalent. This card is pretty interesting. It gives you the Judora's Potion effect, where you can discard up to 3 cards and deal 1 damage to your opponent. On top of that, you can gain 1 attack for each card discarded, which is absurd. You can also just send this card to the discard to deal 2 damage to your opponent if you need just that extra bit of damage to finish them off. You can cheat this out by discarding it. I think Judora's Wand personally is too slow to really see consistent play, but its effect is so powerful that if you do wind up playing it, you're probably winning the round. And because of that, I give Judora's Wand 2 stars. And that leads us to Superior Shield of Reflection. Superior Shield of Reflection does the same thing that the other shield does, where if you roll any crits on your opponent's battle, you get to deal 2 damage. Being a 5 cost card, I mean, this card is strictly outclassed by like Blade of Ultranova and every other 5 cost equipment in the game. Unfortunately, for that reason, Superior Shield of Reflection, 1 star. Next up is Vera's Winged Dagger. This one is like Blade of Ultranova, but you roll 3 dice instead of 2 dice, and for each success, you deal 2 damage. So it does let you roll 1 more additional dice to Blade of Ultranova. Is that good enough to forego the healing? Probably not. You might as well just play Blade of Ultranova. This card's too slow to get any good value off of it. For me, it is 1 star. And that is the end of the equipment. Next up are the hot dogs. We've got the Fairy Hot Dog. Fairy Hot Dog lets you recycle cards in your discard and put them on top of the deck, or you can stack cards from your hand if there's nothing in your discard you want to stack on top. It helps you trigger the reveals off of your battle effects very easily. It's just a great consistency card, and for that reason, I give it 4 stars. On the other side of the coin, you've got the Ghostly Hot Dog. Does the same thing, except it adds to your hand. You do have to discard 1 card as well, but if you're playing this, you're probably discarding something that you're going to be able to gain the value off of, like Judora or any of her equipment. So, because of the sheer value that you can get potentially off of discarding, and you get to recycle a card from your discard to your hand, I'm going to give Ghostly Hot Dog 4 stars. And that leads us to the regular hot dog. Hot dog lets you draw 1 card. Wow, that's crazy. Hot dog is cool. You get to draw 1 card from your deck. Your deck is just a 48 card deck. It makes your deck just a little bit more consistent that way. Hot Dog is not an auto-include in every deck. As a matter of fact, I found that I would rather personally have other cards in the slot that Hot Dog would take up. But if you just want to see a very certain specific combo more often, Hot Dog being able to just remove unwanted cards in the deck by just being able to draw one instead, is pretty good. And so for that reason, I'll give you 3 stars. And that leads us to the next card, the Teeny Hot Dog. Change one result of a die roll to a critical success. At the worst, this card reads deal 1 damage to your opponent. That's pretty crazy. There's a person at my locals that loves Teeny Hot Dog. He plays 2 copies of it, and multiple times I've lost to him because he drops 2 Teeny Hot Dogs to push that extra damage. It's fine just for that. You could pair it with the Blade of Ultranova or Supernovas to heal as well. You could guarantee potions with it. In the upcoming set, we're going to see the Celebrations mechanics, where if you roll a critical success, you get 5 anniversary counters. Teeny Hot Dog will make that strategy much more consistent, and for that reason, I give Teeny Hot Dog 3 stars. Next up is Camouflage Hot Dog. Your cards cannot be targeted by opponent's card effects this turn. Problem with Camouflage Hot Dog is there's not a lot of cards that target. You can stop Muka or Pant Devil. I think there's another card that this stops, but that's it. That's all Camouflage Hot Dog can stop. And for that reason, 1 star. I'd rather just play Hot Dog of Justice. It's going to be infinitely better in every way. And next up is one of the best hot dogs. We've got Hubert's Special Hot Dog. What's in Hubert's Special Hot Dog? Who knows? That's not even in the description. The description of the item in game, it says nobody really knows what goes on a Hubert's Special Hot Dog. But I know that it is a really good card. It will turn off any hot dogs that your opponent plays. If your opponent uses Hot Dog of Justice, you can just chain Hubert's Special Hot Dog and negate it. And for that reason, I think it's an auto-include. 5 stars. Speaking of which, the next card is the Hot Dog of Justice. Hot Dog of Justice turns off any legends that your opponent plays. We get to see a really interesting battle. If your opponent plays a card, you play Hot Dog of Justice, your opponent tries to negate with Huberts, you play your Huberts and negate their Huberts. It gets totally insane. So much hot dogs being thrown around. Hot Dog of Justice should be an auto-include in every single deck, period. It's just the only way to really interact with your opponent to stop them from comboing off or other effects. So Hot Dog of Justice, insane card, 5 stars. And we have the Diamond Hot Dog. Diamond Hot Dog, if your opponent deals battle damage to you, you reflect that damage back to them. It's pretty good. The only issue with Diamond Hot Dog is that it requires you to be level 4. Now, at that level, you could be seeing really high damages. I was personally owned by a Diamond Hot Dog at Gen Con. The burn player that I was talking about earlier used Diamond Hot Dog on me twice in 1 round. Dealt 6 damage 1 round and 7 the next, so I got completely owned. I lost that round because of it. The unfortunate thing is that it's just really slow, so through conventional decks, this card is not good enough, but in a burn strategy, you can get some really funny plays out of it, and for that reason, I give it 2 stars. And last but not least, the potions themselves, most of them have the same effect, where you have to roll 1 die, and on a success, you get X effect. This one, you heal 2 damage. Is a 50% chance to heal 2 worth playing in your deck? No! 1 star. Freezing Potion. This one requires you to be level 2. On a 50% chance to freeze your opponent, is this worth playing in your deck? No! 1 star. Fiora's Elixir. Now this one is unique. It doesn't have that same potion effect. You get to play actually when revealed, just like the Battle Fairy equipment. And when you do so, you can stack a card on top of your deck to heal 2 hit points, which is pretty tough to do in the game. Also lets you combo equipment back onto your deck. to trigger your when revealed abilities and your equipment that's currently in play. And so for that reason, 3 stars. Next up is Calvar's Potion. This one also requires you to be level 2. It does have the added ability of rolling 3 die instead of 1. You get various effects based off of how many are successes. You can gain 3 attack, 3 defense, or 3 agility. I've had too many times where I've played this card and I rolled 0 successes. And on the rounds where I've rolled even 2 successes, I feel like Calvar's Potion wasn't good enough. The temporary stat boost it gave me for that 1 round has not made any differences. It was a very quick cut in my aggro deck, and this would not see play in any other decks. Maybe in the future, if there's more potion support and Marina decks start becoming a thing, it could see play, but at the current moment, it is a bad card, and for that reason, 1 star. That leads us to Purple Blob Potion. This card is just like Fiora's Elixir, where it does not have the drawback of having to be a 50-50. Rather, if this card is sent from inventory deck to the discard, you can void it instead and deal 1 damage to your opponent's Neopet, which is just pretty good. It doesn't cost anything to be able to do that. You don't have to be level 2 to do that. Or you can just play it to discard 1 card and deal 1 damage, proccing other discard effects, which is pretty good. And for that reason, if you're playing a discard deck, you're playing Purple Blob Potion. 4 stars. Slippery Floor Potion, another 2-cost card. Would you like to remove 5 agility off your opponent's pet for a 50-50? No. 1 star. Bombberry Elixir, a 3-cost potion. Wow, 2 50-50s to heal 2 to 4 HP. Was that really worth it? No. 1 star. Eudora's Potion is the other viable potion option. When you send this card from your inventory or deck to your discard, you deal 2 damage. Wow, that's twice as much as Purple Blob Potion. Its activated effect is pretty good too. You can discard up to 3 cards to deal 1 damage for each card discarded. That's a really good effect. If you're on turn 4, chances are that 3 damage will push you to a winning position or win you the round outright. And you don't need to be level 4 to get that discard ability either, just a free 2 damage. And for that reason, 4 stars. Calvar's Marvelous Potion. On a 50-50, you get to set all of your pet stats to 10 for 1 round. Wow. Is that good enough? No. 1 star. I think maybe in a Marina's deck it could be okay, but it is too inconsistent and, quite frankly, too slow to be able to really pop off. And for that reason, I don't think it'll see any play. Even in a future Marina deck, I think it's not going to be good enough. And that leads us to the last card of the set. That is the Bloodberry Elixir. Roll 3 dice on each success. Your Neopet heals 2 damage. Wow! 5 cost to heal maybe up to 6 health. That's crazy! When I go all the way to level 5 to heal maybe 2, maybe 4, maybe 6 damage? No! 1 star. And with that, guys, that's the review. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys have a great night. What about Poison Tip Dagger? Oh yeah, Poison Tip Dagger. Oh my goodness, Poison Tip Dagger. What a wild card. Roll 1 die on a success, deal 69 damage. Woo! It's crazy. 420 stars. Let's go.